All right, Park. Thanks for coming on the show, man. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. First podcast.
Uh, first, I won't make an inappropriate joke immediately in this recording. I'll restrain myself. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, I like to start every episode, just by asking, you to introduce yourself. How you got to where you are today and what you're up to. I think it kind of gives a nice bit of color for us to like jump off from.
Yeah, totally. So I'm originally from just outside of Burlington, Vermont, and I moved out to Jackson Hole about 15 years ago. I actually was coming out for a ski season after graduating college. I
Nice.
went to college with a buddy who grew up out in Jackson, came to visit him a couple times, fell in love with the place. And that ski season turned into, me setting up roots here. And, 15 years later, here I am still in the same spot. So really fell in love with the place. And I started working for the fine dining restaurant group pretty much right when I landed here in Jackson. I actually got a job. This was back in 2008. So getting a job was pretty hard.
Yep.
So I got the first job that I was able to get, which was bussing tables for one of Gavin Fine's restaurant. Gavin Fine, owner of
Yeah.
Fine Dining Group. So I got a job bussing tables, not really sure what I was doing, never worked in restaurants before, and kind of quickly fell in love with the people and the high-paced work environment and the hospitality world, and sort of climbed the ranks from there, from busser to server to bartender, and then started doing some managing and was the GM of one of the restaurants, and then became the director of operations for all of the restaurants, and then got the opportunity to kind of move out of the restaurants but still stay in the same company,
Yeah.
and took that. So now I'm running Bovine and Swine meats and cream and sugar ice cream, which are kind of passion project spin-offs from the fine dining restaurant group. So
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I mean, it must be something kind of huge for you, to kind of go from like restaurant background, like GMing a restaurant, to now trying to launch an ice cream brand or a meats brand. It's a kind of completely different challenge for you.
it's completely different, but I feel like restaurants kind of prepare you for anything,
Okay.
in that, you have to it's all about problem solving and problem solving quickly. So, nothing seems insurmountable as far as when mistakes are made or when we need to make something happen for someone. And hospitality has always been at the forefront. So, whether it's dealing with a customer, dealing with someone in the freight or logistics world where hospitality isn't typically what you think of.
Yeah.
It really does go a long way to just treat people with respect and extend to them the hospitality you would if they were sitting at a table in one of your restaurants. So
That's awesome. And I guess, like, let's say like, cream and sugar ice cream, okay?
yeah.
Like, that was a concept that was born as an idea, or were they serving that in the restaurants beforehand and they were like, we actually could, we could like actually sell this like as a retail product?
Yeah, so both brands actually started very similarly. So I'll tell you about cream
Yeah.
and sugar, since that's what you asked about. So we have an executive pastry chef, Chad Horton, who's worked for the company for, oh God, quite a while.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't want to get misquoted here, but
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. So he's always made. We do everything from scratch. So he's always made ice cream for all of our restaurants, and he makes all of the desserts. We have a commissary kitchen where he makes all of these things. We make all the pastas, all the breads, and all the pastries. So anything that you could think of that would come out of like a pastry chef is coming out of this commissary kitchen, and he created. So he's always made the ice cream, but what he did start doing, back around 2013, was making these mini ice cream sandwiches that are, homemade chocolate chip cookies. They're small, about silver dollar size ice cream sandwiches,
Yeah.
rolled with sprinkles. And those were really what developed a cult following and kind of made us decide, hey, maybe we have something here and maybe we should, make this available to people that are other than just our restaurant guests. So, because people kept asking, can I get these for my son's birthday party? Or, how do I get these other than just, ordering them off the menu at your restaurant?
Yeah.
So, in order to do that, we decided, okay, we're gonna, throw 6 of them in a quart container, slap a sticker on them, and put them in a freezer in our wine shop, and people can buy them from there.
Yeah.
And it looked pretty ghetto at first, and we were just trying to appease the local market, but the demand continued, and we were like, okay, we've got something here. So we decided to come up with the name Cream and Sugar, and come up with some branding, this very whimsical kind of Dick and Jane chalkboard stick figure branding.
I love the web. When I was looking it up online, I loved the website. I have to say, I thought it was
it's very playful, and it makes adults feel like they want to be kids again, and obviously kids can really resonate with it. So that was, and then from there we grew really organically. We got into a couple local stores in the Jackson area, did a lot of like grassroots marketing, doing demos at the grocery stores and things like that. And working with some of the food purveyors that sold us our raw ingredients in the restaurants. So some of these distributors that we were buying groceries from, we asked them, hey, can we throw some ice cream on your truck and you send it back to Salt Lake City, where you then distribute? And that was kind of how we started to grow into the next layer out from Jackson into the region.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And it's like, scaling an ice cream brand, like any brand, I mean, it's an enormous challenge. Like, you have to I think about it in my own job. I mean, it is my job, which is like, how do we develop fame? Like, how do we want people to come and find us? How do we want to sell out every bit of inventory that we have? How do we go back to the well? How do we think about new products, new flavors, like menu innovation, that kind of stuff? Like, does that all stem from the same chefs you have, or is it fundamentally its own company now within the portfolio of brands that fine dining owns?
So that's a good question. I'd say a little bit of both. We're still very much, we're that commissary kitchen I mentioned where we do all the pastries and stuff, that's still where we're making, the sausages for Bovine and Swine, and the ice cream and things like that come out of there. So it still is, a think tank for many different chefs that work out of that building. And so while it may or may not be Chad Horton, the founder of the brand, as far as a creative mind goes, it may not be him always coming up with the flavors. It is often him coming up with them, or sometimes, it's just what people are requesting at the local store. I mentioned to you offline, we do have a brick and mortar scoop shop at, on the town square in Jackson that we actually just opened last summer. So it's still kind of new, but that's where we end up kind of having it be our testing ground for new flavors and innovations and things like that. And one of the big things we've been trying to implement, or we have been implementing at that scoop shop, are these collaborative flavors where we work with another local company, local brand.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Like, if there's a distillery or something, you'll have a gin or a whiskey flavor.
Totally. Yeah, so we did a Wyoming whiskey.
That's where my brain goes.
We did with Snake River Roasters, we did a coffee flavor. We're actually doing a really fun one right now with some of the kindergarten classes around town, where all of the kindergartners are coming up with ideas, and we're going to vote on it on our Instagram page, which one, and then they're all going to come down and make the ice cream, and then we'll have that be, one of the flavors. So we've gotten pretty wild and wacky with some of them there, but it's pretty easy to test things when you've got a little shop to do it. So.
And when you think about scaling it as its own brand, what kind of challenges does that give you versus, say, the challenges of working in a restaurant group where you're trying to scale a culture and a kind of restaurant brand versus a product brand, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I'd say the biggest challenges are quality and logistics, probably, as far as that goes. The culture is easier to maintain probably as we grow the ice cream brand, just because we still are so centralized, and all of our people are together in one spot, and it still only is one company. We did have a little bit of trouble. We've experimented with having, I don't want to say experimented with, we did have a sales team that was that was based all over
those of you listening. Yeah.
Exactly. And we've kind of scaled back to bring everything back into Jackson. And in one of my biggest challenges when we had someone in Kansas City and someone in Houston was that culture side of things and connecting with them. And there's you do lose something even if you're having a Zoom call with them every day. They feel a little disconnected from, because so much of our culture is based around also our place in Jackson. Such this vibrant environment with so many tourists coming in and out, and the beautiful mountains and outdoor setting that I felt like we were losing a little bit of that part of our story by having people elsewhere. Not to say it can't be replicated in that culture, but they also had never been part of the restaurant culture in Jackson with the rest of our crew. So it always felt a little detached. By no fault of theirs, probably more fault of ours, just not really conveying that to them. But I'd say that was the biggest challenge as far as maintaining culture as we grew with the ice cream and the sausage brands, was the remote work side of things. And I have talked to other people who are in other fields that's one of their biggest challenges, is the maintaining culture with the remote workers. So
yeah, no, totally. I mean, that's why I always probe that kind of as a question. It's certainly something like, I mean, we're like a fully remote organization here at Landed. And so luckily there's a bunch of us in sort of hubs, like a bunch in Philadelphia, a bunch in Los Angeles, a bunch in New York, a couple in San Francisco, and then everyone else is kind of dotted kind of globally elsewhere. Hubs of like, you know what I mean? And so, I guess the takeaway that I have, like I would say we have, is very much like intentionality, is like a key thing. So like being intentional about culture and norms, and like, I guess, over communication. So like, again, a question is, and it's interesting because I hear a lot from restaurant groups as well, where they talk about like, the pre and post COVID, and like what are one of the big things that have changed. A lot of organizations have really dialed into their communication with their staff and employees, and like, how do they encourage it? How do they meet them where they're at? Like, as in, you're giving a 17-year-old an email, they're never gonna look at an email, you know what I mean? Like, as in, or that message bulletin board in the office, like, as like, it's something to see that versus like, how do you make sure it's in their phone where they live the whole time? It's like doubling down on that type of communication. I think for like, especially globally distributed companies, when they're remote, like, that's where like, having a really like standardized sort of protocol for communicating where communication lives, I think helps make the organizations thrive or not. You know what I mean? But again, like, every kind of company is kind of different. And that's one of the beauties of doing this podcast, Park, is I hear like so many different perspectives on culture, how to maintain it, how to keep it while a company is growing. And it's kind of like very much different strokes for different folks, but it kind of all stems from like, really like understanding the person who works for you. How do you figure out how to motivate them to actually deliver the job you want? How do you articulate the message and the vision? Because I think a lot of people want to be associated with the vision, like by working somewhere, you're like, where are we going with this? Like, what is the purpose of this? And in a post-COVID world, I mean, especially for younger workers, I mean, the rest of us are all scarred. I mean, you're talking about 2008 financial crisis, but I'm like, there's kids in my team that don't even know that even happened, Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't know what it was like going straight, because I was the same. I mean, it was like in Ireland, it went on until 2012. So you want to talk about like, like one of the reasons why I came here. But like, it's funny looking at it now, like in the sense of like maintaining culture is like, it's just so important. I had a guy on, about 2 months ago, he was director of OpEx at Dave & Buster's. And he was like, look, we're at like 200 locations. And it's like, fundamentally we're an arcade with food, like, as in, it's not really patentable, so people can copy it. People do. Everywhere you go, there's like either a Dave & Buster's or there's like an arcade with food and drinks and everything else. And like, they're kind of everywhere. And he's like, why did we get to 200 and they're at 1 or 2 locations? And it's like, it's not the food of the arcade. You know what I mean? Like, it's more than that. Like, it's the culture, like what separates, like making that a great place to work. And I think about that a lot in this. And when I think about culture, it's like, well, how many of your staff would even say that it's like a great place to work? And I think to your point about remote, there's a very big struggle there, because it's very easy to make that disconnect and thus make it less great place to work, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking here. I mean, in the sense like, who am I interviewing? But no, but like, I mean, in the sense, I'm just trying to like contextualize what I'm hearing from you. You know, like I think ultimately, like it is for an up and coming brand like yours. You know, like, and you got two of them. I know we're only speaking to Cream and Sugar, but like, you know, it's an up and coming brand. I mean, you're looking to like presumably get into way more retail stores. You know, nail your. Is it the Midwest? Is that where Jackson kind of counts as?
So we're a little farther west than that.
Mountain West. Mountain
Yeah,
West. Is it?
Mountain West. You know,
Mountain
I'd
West.
say Rocky Mountains, but I think most people associate that with Colorado. So we're, you know, I just call it
John Denver would.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we're spreading in that Mountain West area, you know, Utah, Colorado, Montana, Idaho. And then, you know, we do a little bit of business out in California, as far west as that. And we have gone as far east as Chicago, but we've reined that back a little bit. So,
and you know, when you talk about like say sales teams, it's actually interesting, and I'm curious your take. You know, what like was it the cultural thing, or was just like, do you think like, you know, the product market fit, as they say in technology? You know, you give something to a salesperson, and it's like if their job is to sell it and they can't sell it, it's like, is the product not there, or is the salesperson not there? Is the market not there? Like, what were kind of some of the reasons you think you kind of brought the accordion back in a bit?
I'd say the main reason was a little bit more of I think we spread our wings a little too, or our net a little too far too quickly.
Yeah.
So it was hard for us to maintain on the ice cream side the quality of our product, which we really didn't want to be one of those mass produced products that, you know, that the quality suffered, because our ice cream sandwiches still are rolled by hand. You know, and we don't want to manufacture this, you know, cookie cutter ice cream sandwich. And then, you know, another big part was honestly the freight side of things, the logistics. You know, we're shipping frozen and refrigerated food that is perishable. So unless we're dealing in full truckloads, it was not the most sustainable to, you know, to be sending a pallet or two all the way out to Chicago and then a pallet or two down to Texas. So, you know, we really wanted to have it be a regional brand. And also we didn't feel like we'd made as big a footprint in Colorado and Utah and Montana as we could have. So really wanted to focus on, you know, kind of owning our backyard, so to speak, before, you know, branching out. And, you know, early on, we definitely got excited by opportunities that maybe we should have, you know, with foresight looked at and been like, hey, it's a couple years down the road. But if someone, you know, someone at a big grocery store chain reaches out to you and is like, hey, do you want to come in and give us a bunch of money to be in, you know, 150 of our stores? We were like, well, yeah, that sounds great. I don't know how we're going to get to Kansas City, but, you know, and so that, you know, we jumped at some things that now looking back, you know, we're building the plane as we're flying it. So to, you know, we're restaurant people. We're passionate about the products we have, and we know they're good. And, but we're kind of learning as we go, as far as the distribution of food and, you know, the food side. So
no, totally. I mean, so say for the rest of 2024, like what are the big milestones ahead of you coming up this year?
So for Bovine and Swine, we're about to launch in the Intermountain division for Whole Foods. So we've been in the local Whole Foods store here in Jackson, and we're about to get into the rest of the region. And that'll be kind of a testing ground for us with them to potentially get into the rest of their regions.
Nationwide, yeah.
And, you know, that really is the clientele that we resonate with. You know, it's we care a lot about the sustainably sourced beef and pork and bison that we're using in our products. We try to keep it as regional as possible, you know, working with local ranches and getting whole animals in and butchering them, and, you know, selling the steaks in our restaurants and the trim in our sausages. So it's like it really is a cool story. And it's a story that I feel like sometimes those customers care a little more about, rather than just the price tag on it. Because we have gotten ourselves into situations where, you know, we're not trying to compete with the Johnsonvilles of the world. We know we can't, and we know we don't have any interest in that. So, because we know we have a different product that is, much more high quality meat, and, that they've been raised sustainably. And so we're, that's a big thing on the horizon for the bovine and swine side of things. Cream and sugar wise, we also just got into Albertsons in the same kind of territory. So, 100 some odd stores in the Intermountain region for Albertsons. So that's a big one on the horizon. And then actually an exciting one that we've kind of been doing the last couple of years during football season is we've actually been doing some pop-ups at the San Francisco 49ers stadium that have been branded. I take it you're not a 49ers fan, or are you?
No, I am. That's just, I'm still scarred from Sunday,
I know. So we did some pop-ups at their stadium all through the playoffs. Actually, it was pretty fun. So we were featuring bovine and swine and cream and sugar, and we also we also do have a beer brand, Roadhouse Brewing, that's in the stadium. So yeah, we were kind of doing a trifecta of things, and we basically got to pop up in one of their private clubs and take over a kitchen for the games. So that's been super fun, and we kind of hope that relationship continues. In what capacity, not sure just yet, but it's definitely been cool to get involved in that. So
yeah, especially a successful team,
totally. It's just this, it's not just that they're going on in the stadium. They've got concerts. They've got, they're one of the venues for the upcoming World Cup in 2026. There's like a lot of cool things going on. So.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's the furthest away stadium from any city in the NFL. It's 52 miles from San Francisco, the 49ers stadium.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, it's not close. When I fly,
it ain't in San Francisco.
No, we flew into San Jose whenever we did it because it's way easier.
Yeah, and I learned my lesson the hard way. I went to see U2 in Santa Clara in 2017 when they were doing that Joshua Tree 20 years, 30 years. And I remember I got the train to Mountain View, and I thought it was in Mountain View. No, it wasn't. That's where light rail. And you want to talk about American public transportation in a nutshell. I was so furious. I just ordered an Uber and I was like, screw this, man. I'm over this. And I got to U2 just as they were coming on stage, and I left at 6 p.m. You know what I mean? You're like, I've given that 3 hours to get to a stadium that's 50 miles away. It is, it's I love the 49ers. In case anybody's listening related to the 49ers, the stadium is not close or convenient. Not like the Warriors, who I love as well. So
there's also nothing around the stadium. It feels like it was just middle of nowhere. There's not even a bar outside of it where you could get a drink after a game. It's
actually really and I think that's kind of symptomatic of a lot of these stadiums that are built in sort of car parks in the middle of nowhere. They could have kept Candlestick. Warriors at least is in China Basin, which is a relatively up and coming part of San Francisco, and it's right there. But when you go to European, I'm an Arsenal fan, and if you go to an Arsenal game, you're in North London, and it's Park. Yeah.
I'm a massive.
So I also I also have 20 years of pain, so it's fine. Ugh.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I was just in London this past spring. Actually, I went to a few games.
Yeah, did we lose at the games you went to?
I was literally there for the beginning of the end of our title.
I was gonna say, did the wheels fall off at that stage? That was around April.
They fell off while I was there. It was so tragic and awesome at the same time just to be there. But I went to the London Stadium for that West Ham away game, and then I was at the Southampton game. I was there during the City game, and then I was at the last Chelsea game.
The City game, we lost about 4-0 or something, wasn't it? We got pretty hammered there.
Rob got that consolation goal. But anyway, so I was there for the beginning of the end, there for 2.5 weeks, but got to see a bunch of matches, which was awesome. So
that's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Were you purveying the ice cream or the the premium sausages on offer in London or anything, you know?
I
You
was
go by-
definitely sampling, but I have no interest in distributing our stuff overseas. That sounds like I actually have a friend who works in the importing business with olive oil, and it just sounds like a whole nother headache that I don't want to get into.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's fair. I mean, you got to take over the Mountain West first.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me, I mean, obviously we're just I guess we're kind of coming up on time. I guess. But tell me, like, you know, in terms of like their like opportunities, like what's like a big challenge like facing you? Like, what's like if we're to say for the rest of the year, like what's a big challenge for you?
I would say the biggest challenge is that's a good question. I think the biggest challenge is how to sell a product and a story to people when you can't be the one. If you're a server at a restaurant, you can tell that story of where that steak came from, or how the dish was cooked, and you can really get that across to the customers. But how can you tell that story and get that message across to your customers when it's just sitting on a shelf of a grocery store with a price tag that's admittedly higher than most, and how to really build that brand, and get that loyalty right off the bat. So that's been our largest challenge, and we're combating it a million different ways. But the biggest way is to have one of us, one of the people that created the product, be in the stores cooking up samples for people and talking about it. And that becomes increasingly harder and harder to do the farther your footprint spreads, but something we really value and we don't want to ever lose. Like Gavin, our owner, he comes to all these events, he comes to these food shows because he really wants to be there and to talk to these people. And Joel Tate, who's the founder of Bovine and Swine and the one who created all the recipes, just like Chad did on the ice cream side, he likes to go to all these things. He still does grocery store demos and, he walks in the back door of restaurants and talks to chefs and cooks up samples for them. So I think not losing that kind of grassroots sales approach is the biggest way to do that. But I think it is something that's going to become more and more challenging the bigger we grow.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, like you are the brand and you are the face of it. Are there brands that you think of when you think of the evolution of, say, Bovine and Swine or Cream and Sugar, that you are like appropriate analog examples? Like, oh, that brand there is amazing. If we could take the joy or the inspiration or the community element of that brand and kind of get it into ours, we'd be really achieving. Like, are there brands that like inspire you guys as sort of like beacons?
In the ice cream world, Van Leeuwen ice cream comes to mind just as something kind of in your neck of the woods.
I'll tell him when I have him on the podcast very soon.
Are you gonna have him on?
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is he and I actually graduated from the same class at the same college, but didn't know each other then. And I've been meaning
slinging ice cream now.
Now we're slinging ice cream for different companies. Obviously, he's been doing it for quite a bit longer now, but I have been meaning to reach out to him and just kind of connect in that world. But I'm very impressed at what they're doing. And I think they've gone about it in a cool way. They developed a really, really good following in New York first, and obviously that's a much easier place to develop a big following than Jackson Hole, Wyoming. But I do think they're the way they went about it by opening different shops, and then they went into the retail side of things, branding, and they've done some really cool, interesting flavors, funky collabs, things like that. They were a big inspiration of ours with the collabs they're doing at the Scoop Shop for sure. So I think they're doing a great job. On the sausage side of things, I don't know. I'd have to think about that a little bit, but I think Van Leeuwen's a good example on the ice cream side for sure.
Okay, sweet. And then I guess the last question I always ask people, Park, and it's a really vague question, so like prepare yourself for this, and it's purposely vague, which is like, what advice would you give somebody listening to this podcast?
Any advice, huh?
Yeah, that's why it's vague. Yeah, it'll put you right on the spot.
Well, I would first say they should go out and support Arsenal, since both of us are Arsenal fans. I think that's a great way to, you know, indoctrinate people into that world. That
Yeah,
world
yeah,
of,
yeah. If you're really happy about having silver medals, you know.
yeah, yeah. Well, you never know. But otherwise, I would say, since we're talking about work and our company, I would say, just make sure you're passionate about what you're doing, and that you care about, if you are selling something for a living, or just that you care about the company you work for and the product you're selling, and that you believe in it. Because if you don't, it's really not worth whatever money you're making, or it's really gonna take its toll on you. So
All right, awesome.
yeah.
I mean, you're dead right. I mean, like at the end of the day, like if you're not enjoying it, but like again, you've been a GM in a restaurant, so that in
Yeah,
these stressful environments, it's like how do you just kind of create a kind of an environment where people aren't like taking their
totally.
heads
And
off.
there were plenty of nights where I, got off working at a restaurant and I was just like, man, this is, there's bad nights, but
Yeah,
you gotta pull yourself out and look at the big picture, and it's pretty
that's
good. All
awesome.
yeah.
Well, man, thanks for coming on, Park. I appreciate it. Loads of wisdom. Because like I said, way more of the under years, as they say. And I really enjoyed meeting you. It was actually fantastic having you on, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right, great stuff.